Hiya guys, welcome to the Samuel Brunel Elliott channel. Just first off, before I start the video, I just wanted to apologise that this isn't a ship related video. Those are coming up, except I thought, seeing as I went to the Gloucestershire Vintage and Country Steam Extravaganza, I would start off by talking about that. So I wanted to do a video. I always believe that in order to understand the ship, you must understand the time, and as my passion has grown thanks to my ships, from the ships themselves, to the technology used, to the steam locomotives that there were at the time, politics surrounding that era, in order to understand the ship, you must understand the time, which led to me having the passion for all sorts of other things. And that's why I thought I would do a video on this event that happened in Gloucestershire in South Cerney, close to Cirencester. So, I apologise it's not specifically a ship-related video, but I'm sure you guys will enjoy it anyway. So the Steam Extravaganza was put together by the Stroud Vintage Transport and Engine Club group. That is full of volunteers, and not only was it spectacular and a huge event to go to, it was also quite overwhelming with the amount of variety of things that were going on. And I just wanted to say at the beginning of this video, thank you to the volunteers, to the amount of effort that was done to actually make this a full-on extravagant event. With obviously it took a lot of coordination, a lot of organising, and it was just amazing. So to the people of the Stroud and Vintage Transport and Engine Club, just a massive thank you. You did an incredible job. So upon going in, the first thing we saw was this sort of old 1930s organ, which I love. I love the sound of the old vintage steam-driven organs that were ran by printed paper that recorded the music on there. It was amazing. So you walk in and there's all these tents. There's just so much going on. It's hard to describe. You can see by the pictures here how big the event was. And I was in my full gear, and one of the first things that I had to have a picture taken with was my total favourite traction engine of all time. This is the Brunel Road Locomotive, and they were based in Thetford in Norfolk. Now, these were some of the most elaborate showman's engines that were built by the Brunel company. Some of them were just absolutely made to be part of the show. In fact, back in the early 1900s, showman's engines were really one of the main attractions of any fun fair or circus. These things had a dynamo on the front of them, which meant not only could this thing pull the circus to wherever it needed to go, or fun fair, it would actually be able to power it. It would power the rides, the shops, the lights, everything that would be needed could be powered from this one gorgeous steam engine that could just move around on wheels. The way it would work is a leather belt would be attached to the flywheel in the picture there, and then that belt would be attached to the dynamo. The dynamo would then spin with the flywheel as the engine was stationary. It would then obviously lead on from cables, powering the entire fair. And as you can see from these pictures, they didn't skimp on making it as elaborate and as beautiful as they possibly could, full of dark reds, bronze colours, very sort of fun fair colour theme going on here. And even the struts that hold up that roof above it is curved to make it look like the gold poles you would find on an old carousel. So these traction engines could also be used for things like road surfacing, with a great big roller on the front to squish the tar. They could be adapted easily, they could just be made to specification. A lot of these engines, bearing in mind, they were ordered by big companies to their specification, admittedly with the same sort of design, but designed for what they needed it for. And before this, horses were the only way to do agricultural work and transport. Admittedly, when the railways came along, that was fantastic. I mean, you could easily hop on a train and go somewhere. But travelling without rails was still in its infancy. when the traction engine became really popular between the 1840s and onwards, that's when things started to progress onto the roads. It was them who first saw that these things could go without rails anywhere they needed to go, and they could be used for all kinds of purposes. They even started advertising them in newspapers just like cars are today. However, once that did happen, when you get to the later part, so say 1900, they became incredibly popular. They were almost everywhere. They sped up production of agriculture by almost 4 times, what with the ploughing speeds being increased and the separating the wheat from the grain. I mean, bearing in mind at this point the petrol engine was invented, but it was still in its infancy, and it wouldn't be until 1908 when the Model T Ford came out. But then if you think about it like that, the Model T Ford just didn't have the power as these great traction engines did. In fact, it wasn't until after World War II, with all the leftover lorry parts and the petrol engines, that the traction engines really began to see their end. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Are you thinking this video is going to be all about traction engines and other steam engines other than ships? Well, actually no. They even had small steam pleasure yachts at this thing. This one is of the Kathleen, which utilizes a very traditional based boiler surrounded by wood and held together by copper, and then it could power you along any river. It's a river cruiser. And she was absolutely beautiful to see at this event. I mean, anything that was powered by steam, it was almost here. You know, I saw almost every variation of vehicles that were powered by the great power of steam. After I returned home, I did try to research this ship. I looked up online. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the right steam yacht Kathleen to actually research. But if anyone does know the name or the page where I can find out more information about this beautiful steamboat, I would love for you guys to comment and to actually show me which website to use. Looking at the boiler, she was just gorgeous. She was absolutely stunning, so I really want to know more about this certain boat. So, in the event, there was also other side sections where you could see smaller machinery actually in work. This one was really interesting. It showed one of what I like to call the mini traction engines, the baby traction engines, powering the machinery using leather belts and their drive wheel, and it is fascinating to see this. It's beautiful. The traction engine just drives the belt and it drives every piece of machinery you see there is being driven from that one engine. I mean, it's absolutely amazing, and you can get the sense of how many variations there must have been of these engines, because obviously you don't just get the full-sized, Goliaths or the medium size. You actually get tiny small ones, just like when you go to some of these railway attractions. They always have small mini engines that can pull 10, 20 people along, and they're the size of a small corgi dog, and it's incredible. Here's one of the really small mini versions of the traction engine, which I am stood next to. I'm not actually entirely sure what's going on with my face in that, but I'm not going to go on about that. It's just a face. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I was probably blinded by the sun. Either that or I've got so excited I've just had to change my trousers. But this one, you can see the size difference. A person will sit on the back of that and happily ride along, pumping coal into the boiler just as you would a full-sized one. One of my favourite small little traction engines that I saw this day was this one. The one that's called William, which I love. Steam engines, ships, whatever, that are given names. It gives them personality. It doesn't just give them a number plate or anything of the sort. It gives them a personality. So this little traction engine, William, he's actually powering, he's supposed to be looking like he's powering that carousel next to him. And that's because it's sort of recreating a miniature scene. What I love about this is the Union Jacks that are flying out the side, and next to him, you've got that traction engine with the crane. Now, some fairs would have more than just one traction engine. They often may have 2 or 3. One of them would usually consist of a crane to help with lifting heavy objects, raising tents, that type of thing. Another thing that we saw was actually vehicles from the British Army, which I always love seeing. I always love the opportunity to have a look at either old vehicles from World War I, World War II, right up until modern day defence vehicles. One of them I found very interesting. It was this Hong Kong police car, which it says Royal Hong Kong Police, which I was a bit confused by. If anyone knows anything more on that vehicle, I would like to know more. It was more like a tank than a police car. Here is obviously one of the bigger tanks that was there, the really big defence tanks, which was amazing to see. There was quite a variation. They even had an old air gun that was there as well, which was quite fascinating to look at. The size of those bullets was, well, I wouldn't like to be on the receiving end of one of those, let's just say that. So whenever at these events, I always do try to dig deep for these guys. It is important that we do try to support these charities such as the Poppy Appeal and such. One of the main charities that I dug deep for this year was the Royal British Legion. Because what they do is they support soldiers and Navy members and Royal Air Force pilots in important ways, let's just say that. They do a hell of a lot to help them. And so this year that was my main charity I wanted to give to. So yeah, it was really nice to have a chat with these guys and have a bit of a insight into some of these vehicles as well. So amongst other things here, you also had the buses that you could go and look at. They had a bus section, they had a commercial vehicle section, they had Land Rovers and vintage cars, which I will get to at the end of the video. Right now, I think it's about time I showed you one of the main highlights for myself. Now, don't get me wrong, being able to actually stroke an alligator was great, but the highlight for me, as we was walking around this astonishing place, and it was massive, my legs were almost dead by that point, we came across the Ferris wheel that we could see from a different distance. I don't know whether you ever saw in the other pictures, but there was always this Ferris wheel in the background. And we got up to it, and there was the most beautiful working showman's engine I've seen in probably my life. I would say that. I've been to a lot of steam rallies. Here is one of the most impressive showman's engines I have seen. So the very aptly named The Lion was the steam engine I dreamt of seeing for a very long time. This thing was absolutely gorgeous. She was huge, she was powerful, she was noisy, and she drove the Ferris wheel and some of the shops from the dynamo that you see at the front of her. What was amazing about this engine is I learnt that it was actually part of a class. It was built by a company called Fowler, and the Lion class, they did build many showman's engines. Some of them stand up in some of the world's most famous, such as the Supreme and also the showman's engine aptly named Carry On. And it was absolutely gorgeous. So from the front of it, when I was stood there in the front of the engine, my goodness, you could feel the heat coming out of the boiler, and it was absolutely astonishing. One of the highlights of my day there. So one of the things about these engines is they could also be used as trucks. Here we've got a W.J. King truck just passing, and these were very popular. These were used until around the 1950s, some of them lasting to the 1960s because of their reliability. Even when petrol engines came along and they were a lot more reliable, a lot more cleaner, the steam truck, as they were known, was very successful. One of the biggest engines in this show was the one aptly named Gigantic, which it was absolutely huge. It must be one of the bigger engines, and they weigh around 20 to 25 tons. Sadly, it's quite upsetting to think that she was abandoned, but somebody bought her I can't remember the name of the guy who bought her, but he bought her and restored her to her original glory and gave her the name Boadicea. Here we can see some of the smaller steam engines that were just coming out of the show. So these small steam engines, these weigh around, probably around 5 to 10 tons. I'm not too knowledgeable about the smaller traction engine size and weight. Even so, they are powerful. They are very powerful. I mean, they can take loads. They could transport little carriages and goods. They were a bit of a novelty, I suppose, but they could have some practical use as well. Such as the small showman's engine here. That could actually have a dynamo on the front. It could be used. It was a practical machine and quite quirky as well. And might I just say, they are the cutest things in creation. So now, guys, I'm actually going to shut up for a minute because I'm sure you're fed up of hearing my voice. And what I'm going to do is show you the video of a surprise. I didn't realise this would happen at a steam rally, but they had parachuters. And they were parachuting from a plane to demonstrate, which was absolutely incredible. It was all done for charity. There were people collecting for it, as I said, and it was for the army. It was for one of them. It was the Royal British Legion, which I did donate to because I really believe in what they do. So this is actually the footage of that with some dramatic music. So enjoy. So guys, this is the longest video that I've actually ever made for any of my channels. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'm sure I shall see you guys in the next video. Tatty bye now, people.